Unique golf swings are everywhere in the world, and yes, they do exist on the tour. The reason we only see a handful at the tour level is purely due to consistency and effectiveness of that wild swing. When you are separating the top 0.1% of golfers, every stroke counts. However, sometimes a savant will appear on the world rankings with an unusual swing motion. Today we are going to look at 4 of these swings and quickly diagnose how their motions work. And if you stick until the end of the video, we have a bonus swing today from an amateur who has one of the wildest swings I have ever seen, and I have seen my fair share. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the wildest swings we have seen and find out the question to how in the does that work? First on the list, we have a very colorful Hosung Choi, and Hosung has a very unique swing. You can see his feet are aiming well right at the target, including his shoulders. Now this plays a key role as he gets his arms to lift really high to that secondary plane line. I want you to look at where his foot line is and also where his club shaft line is. They're identical, so this is how he makes his swing work. Now he will drop that club down in and start to stand up, losing his spine angle, but that'll also allow his club to tilt under. And from here on out, now he can just turn as hard as he can. You can see this exaggerated position as he turns on through impact and rotates as far as he can on that left side. Not a swing I'm going to teach somebody, but it's definitely doable, and you can see at this level, pretty fun to watch. Our Yuan has an interesting motion, but it's more out of necessity. We can take a look at how much power he does create, and he needs to relieve that power somehow. And the most important thing that we can see here is once we take that club to the top plane line, he is set perfectly. And just like my last video here, let's draw a line where that butt of the club is straight down to the ground. You can see it's not quite as tight as Adam Scott was. Adams is right over where those two lines intersect, but it's pretty close. Now let's take a look at what he does on the way down, which is the most important thing. So let's take a look as he takes that club down. He will drop the club down by losing some of his spine angle. We can see the new spine angle sticking up a little bit straighter, and what it naturally does is let that club fall back to perpendicular with that spine, and this will bring it closer to that lower plane line. And he's not stopping there. He gets that club on that lower plane line immediately, and the hands almost matching that lower plane line, which is almost impossible to do. Now once he starts coming through, he has built up so much power and is down in that lower plane line with the body crunched over that he has to release that power and make room. So what does he do? That left leg just turns completely off and the right side explodes through. So you can see he is a very right-sided dominant player, but he has stored up so much power that he has to do this. Again, not something I would teach, but it is a great motion and very reliable for the right person. Barber was a savant, and he had a couple of moves that separated him, and it's borderline Matt Wolff. So I wonder if Matt Wolff kind of picked up something from him, or it's just a coincidence that they're both hand and eye coordination savants. Let's take a look at the setup where we see that chest. Let's take a look at the setup and we can see familiar grounds here. Chest, hands, golf ball position, all on a straight line. He looks a little bit stacked on the left side, but that plays a purpose because he does actually have a slight stack and tilt move to offset this. Once we take that club back, we will take a look at where that triangle is. So the triangle is still pretty connected here. We can see the chest out in front of the hands. Triangle's looking good. As we take that club back even further, we can see the triangle's trying to get there, but because he is kind of tilting under, this is going to limit his turn. Now when he limits his turn, something strange happens. So he gets to a point right about here. He has to lift up that left leg to get whatever turn he can because of his stacking, and as a result, look at where his club shaft is versus his turn. They're almost identical, so he's done a pretty good job of connecting his shaft to his turn, which has some benefits. Now let's clean up some of these lines here and let's move on down through. So once we go into it, lower body drives into that impact line. He is going to tilt slightly under. This is still very stack and tilt like. As he drives through, let's get those hands back out in front of the chest. He's a little bit behind the ball game here, but he again is a savant with his hands and arms with timing. So it's on that right side of the shoulder, which is a little bit behind the game, where we see most of the modern tour players. They're already still connected because they have a deeper turn, but that doesn't stop our man here. Let's keep on going down through right before impact. This is about textbook as you can get. Hands slightly ahead, there is that release point, but now let's play the game of connection. Let's see if we still maintain that connection all the way through. We have shoulders, hands, and chest. We keep on going through shoulders, hands, and chest. And this is normal for somebody that has hand-eye coordination, but the main thing is these hands and chest still playing connection? And they are. Hands, shoulders, chest. They're still connected. So the big thing is it doesn't really matter how you get down to impact. It's what happens at impact and past impact. And usually that's momentum based. So position based turns into momentum based on the downswing. Again, this is a luck of the draw type of swing. A savant, you would never mess with this swing, and you probably wouldn't teach this swing. Eumonn Darcy was the human helicopter. I would call him Airwolf because he was so up and down, it was ridiculous. I want you to look at the path of his hands. Let's just take a look at the club going back and forth. Look at how straight up and down that goes. That is as vertical as you can get. Now you'll notice that he does have a flying right elbow, but it has to keep that club going straight up in the air. But guess what? His hands are still out in front of his chest. He's doing a pretty good job staying in his spine angle. So this is just a bunch of rerouting going on. And the first reroute we see is that club dropping straight down, but he doesn't reroute with his spine, which is very unusual. A lot of these rerouting actions from the top to the bottom, when you have to drop it that severely, you see a lot of standing up. But the really good thing about him is once he turned into it, he has cleared his left side so much. Look at that whole body facing the target that it still allows him the room to drop those hands straight down. And another thing he is doing is he is bowing that wrist. I know this was filmed with the potato back in the day and it's hard to see, but you can see that bend in the wrist bowing the other way to drop the club, and we can see a little light flicker over there. There's his shaft now. It's still, that's Shanksville. But lucky for him, he's got some pretty quick hands. He drops it lower than that and still able to get that club shaft down to impact. So look at the amount of talent this man has. There is no way that you can teach this. There's no way that you can unlearn this. So if he came to me and said, I need a lesson, first of all, I'll say, let's go chipping and putting, because that's all we got for you. But the great thing about this motion is the amount of timing it must have taken to play at an elite level. But his plane work was fairly good. His timing must have been that of a savant. And the one thing I want to get across with these 4 videos is we saw a bunch of manipulations. Most of the time though, it was manipulations with the hands and arms, with the exception of a few that moved their spine angles up and down. But it was still body turn. It was still hands connected to the chest. It was still rotation, core-driven motions that got them to the excellence of the tour. For us mere mortals, if you can just help by alleviating some of your discrepancies, you'll be ahead of the game, but you can't do this alone. Don't watch these and start tinkering with your swing and think you can fix this. There's no one cure, one fix. That doesn't work. You have to see a golf pro, but don't go anywhere. We've got a really cool video for you of an amateur swing that I think is probably one of the best unusual swings I've seen.